Welcome on into the Third Down Analysis podcast. I'm your host, Danny Jackson. I'm the founder and creator of thirddownanalysis.com. And today we're going to be talking about Colorado, Deion Sanders, and the importance that they could have to the Big 12 long term. Welcome on in. Thanks for joining today. Excited to talk about Colorado and Deion Sanders and the importance that they could have to the Big 12 long term. Now, before I do that, I want to remind you, as always, if you want some of the written content that I've produced, it's out at thirddownanalysis.com. If you have any feedback, certainly leave a comment here in the YouTube video. If you're listening to this on podcasts through Apple or Spotify, then certainly you can email me support@thirddownanalysis.com. And I would encourage you, if you have feedback, if you have ideas, if you have thoughts, then please email them to me. One of my missions with this is to provide you with data and analysis that takes some heavy lifting to do. And I can do that. I can then share it with you, share the story of what I'm finding. And then you get to take that and you get to go to the water cooler at work. You get to go talk with your friends, your buddies, share some of this information, and you'll come away sounding kind of smart. And it will help you enjoy your watching and consuming of college football. If you like this content, then certainly I would ask you to like the YouTube video, like the podcast on Apple, Spotify. And if you don't, then I would ask you to give me some feedback as to why you don't. That is very constructive and helpful for me. And sharing it also is very helpful. Anyways, now before I jump into Colorado, I am not currently sponsored, and so I do a pun read. And honestly, I'm going to do a pun read for as long as I do this podcast because I enjoy them. So the question I have for you is, did you hear about the boy who tried to catch the fog? Well, if you didn't, it's because he missed. Just let that settle in on you. All right. I want to talk about Colorado, but before I talk about that, I need to set up some context as to why I'm going to talk about them. Now, I put some of this out on some written content on thirddownanalysis.com. You can find that there. I'm going to give you a little bit of a different take using some of the same analysis, but give you a little bit deeper insight. So it's nice there. You can go out to the written content. You can read some of this. You can consume it in a different format there. But also, if you're driving to work, happy to let you consume it this way. So as we know, Oklahoma and Texas, they are on their merry way to the SEC. They're riding, Bevo and the Boomer Schooner thing. I never knew how to exactly say that, actually. So any Oklahoma fans out there, please let me know. But they're on their way eastward. And the Big 12 is left with a gap in brand. There's no debating that Oklahoma and Texas were enormous brands. They were national brands. They were what I have called foundational brands. I would call them a tier 1 brand. So they are part of that tier that you could not have college football without having those brands. Now, brand is becoming even more important in college football. Brand has always been important, but as the top has become more exclusive in terms of how do you get to the national title, and as money has also started to follow in more abundance to those at the top, those at the top are typically those with the best brands. And brand comes through a few different ways. Winning is the ultimate way to develop your brand. You cannot have a strong brand in college football without winning. Then you can have, if you go through a period where you've won quite a bit, and then you have a period of struggle, you still have a brand that is weakened but can be revived. Think about Nebraska. Think about Miami. Think about Florida State for a while, and now this last year they have really revived themselves. Now, one thing about brand is, and I'll mention here with Florida State and why brand is so important. Um, the SEC and who they play and the brand of playing in what we all generally say is the best conference in football. It's the Big 12 is going to gradually, they could find themselves again looking a little bit more on the outside here as we talk about college football playoff. Now, their champion is going to get into the 12 team CFP, so that's fine. They're not going to run into a Florida State situation like this last year, but I've already started to hear talk from a number of industry experts and fans alike, and the talk is the 9-3 team is going to get in. And generally, what is given in that context is that it's a Big Ten or an SEC team at 9-3. In fact, I was listening to a gentleman on YouTube the other day who said a 9-3 SEC team is going to get in over a 12-0 Big 12 team. Now, that is his opinion, but I do think there is some reality to a 9-3 LSU team is likely going to have the inside track on a CFP at large spot over, let's say, well, I don't know about a 12-1 Iowa State team that goes 12-0 and loses the Big 12 title game. That'd be hard to leave them out, but I wouldn't put it past LSU being able to sneak in by. I wouldn't be completely shocked. I'm not saying whether that's right or wrong. I'm just saying that would not completely shock me. So the Big 12 is dealing with the fact that they don't have one of those behemoths, one of those tier one brand schools in their conference. And for some people, they think this is going to be great. I think this is going to make for a really exciting on-field product. Excuse me while I drink a little bit of water. I think it's going to make for a really exciting on-field product. But the challenge that's going to come with is when you start stacking up resumes of a 9-3 SEC team versus a 10-2, 11-1 Big 12 team. When that LSU team that's 9-3 is playing and beating some of, or at least being competitive against Alabama, Auburn, Florida, Oklahoma, Kentucky. Now, some of those in the SEC aren't. They're not all juggernauts, but that's going to carry a lot of weight. And I'll cite one example from this past year where Alabama, which has been the best brand in college football for the last 15 years, beat Georgia, which was the strongest brand for the last 2 years, 2 to 3 years, because they won the national title 2 years in a row. So their victory in the SEC title puts them into the 4-team CFP. Now, because Georgia was such a strong brand, that's what propelled Alabama in. Texas had beaten Alabama, so they needed to get in over Alabama. Michigan had been the third strongest brand over the last 3 years because of their 2 previous CFP appearances. They won the Big Ten 3 years in a row. They'd beaten Ohio State 3 years in a row. And they had been in the top 5 for the entire season. So they had a clear spot. Washington came from a Pac-12 conference that was really good last year. One of their best years, ironically, in their last year. And so at least they went out with a bang. So Florida State was in a tough spot. Florida State shouldn't be as much in a tough spot going forward if they have that kind of a season again. But you start to draw the parallels to where some of those Big 12 schools, if they don't win the conference title game, are they going to find themselves in a Florida State position where they miss out on an at-large bid? And so what can the Big 12 do? They can acquire a powerhouse brand, a tier 1 brand, one of 2 ways. One, they can go out and do it through acquisition, and that's through realignment. There's uncertainty over the ACC. It sounds like, from all accounts, Florida State and Clemson are gone. there could be a bevy of schools behind them, but I would, in my opinion, I would put Florida State, Clemson, and Miami as the three schools who have tier one brand potential. I hesitate to put any of them in there right now, but when they are really on their game, they can get into tier one potential. They can compete for a national title because they've all won national titles. The Big 12 could get, I wouldn't put it past Brett Yormark to land one or two or three of those schools. If he were to do that, I believe it would be by luring them in through either one or two things. One, or three things. One, there's a shorter TV deal, so they are not locked in as much, and the revenue is fairly equivalent to the ACC. Two, the revenue actually grows and is more than the ACC because of their additions. Or three, the Big 12 straight up gives them a higher share of revenue. I don't know how that would suit the rest of the Big 12 members, but if Brett Yormark wanted to land a big fish, that could be one of the methods that he does. Now, the other alternative, if they do not acquire these brands, is to organically grow one of your brands. And so you have to figure out which of your schools can do that. Coming into this year, I have seen largely Utah, Oklahoma State, Kansas State talked about as the most prolific brands. Arizona and Kansas, I think Kansas is going to go to the Big 12 title game if they stay healthy. So I think they're really good, but their brand has not been strong really ever in football. And Arizona also does not really have a football brand, relatively speaking. They certainly have a basketball brand. So can Utah, can Oklahoma State, could Kansas State grow brands? They could. They would need to get to the CFP multiple years, and they would really need to make noise. And that is possible. That is certainly possible. And I would be thrilled for any of those schools and for the Big 12 if they were to do that. Now, where I think this is where Colorado comes in. And before I jump to Colorado, I'm going to stop and I'm going to give you one more pun read. Okay, this pun read is brought to you by a website that is giving me all of these puns. So, and thank you to the human that wrote these. What do you get if you cross a vampire and a snowman? Frostbite. That's pretty good. It's a good winter one. That would be a really good winter one. So I'll have to remember that in about 6 months. Now, let's jump back in. All right. So Colorado, this is where I want to bring Colorado into the picture here. With Deion Sanders, I believe Colorado has the potential to become a juggernaut in the Big 12. I say the potential because winning has to follow in order for that potential to be realized. But there are two things that Colorado is doing with Deion Sanders already in 1 year, 16, 15, 18 months, however many months he's been there, that no other school is doing in the Big 12. And some of these numbers, there are not very many schools in the country that are doing. So I want you to put this in perspective. Now, this is also dependent on Deion Sanders staying at Colorado. I don't know what he's going to do. I don't know if very many people know what he's going to do. He could have, presumably he could have gone to Alabama or to A&M this last cycle. There were also 7 head coaching spots that he could have gone to. Who knows if he's waiting for a specific or a few specific situations. Could it be the Cowboys? Could it be Florida State, which Mike Norvell seems to be there for a while. But who knows? I've heard some rumors about Arkansas because Sam Pittman could be on the hot seat if he does not help them improve this year. I hope he does. I like Arkansas. But what I'm going to share is going to be based on the assumption that Deion stays around. And he stays at Colorado for at least 5 years, maybe 7 years. Could be a lot to ask, but it could be special if he stayed, because Colorado, he could get quite a bit of investment. And it would be a pretty neat story to do that at a place that has had historical success. Colorado has a national championship, so they have seen success. But it's also a program that has been down for quite a while. So this would be a neat story. Now, two things that Deion is doing, I mentioned that no one else is doing. He is drawing in viewership in numbers that made my jaw drop. And he is also pulling in very talented recruits in a place that has not typically drawn in the level of recruits that he is drawing in right now. So let me take you through some data related to the viewership. And for those of you on podcasts, I'm going to have a screen pop up here in a minute that you won't be able to see, but this is where you can go to Third Down Analysis and get some of this content. I went through viewership data in 2022 and 2023. And in 2022, Colorado had about 4 million viewers. That was on a 1-11 team the year before Deion Sanders. Fast forward to 2003, and they had weeks 3, 4, and 5 against Colorado State, Oregon, and USC. They had the highest rated games, or highest viewed games of the week in each of those 3 weeks. They were on Pac-12 network for most of 2022. And for 23, they were on ABC or Fox, ABC, ESPN, Fox for most of the season. In fact, there were, at least 8 of their games were on those networks. And in those 3 weeks when they played Colorado State, Oregon, USC, cumulatively between the 3 of those games, they had 26.5 million viewers. So 2022, 12 games, over 4 million viewers. They had 3 games last year that actually, they had 6 games last year, including those 3 I referenced. They were all over 4 million viewers. So he's bringing in eyeballs. They jumped. They jumped from 4 million up to 53 million viewers in 23. That's a 13x growth size. I don't know if 13x growth size is something you can say, but anyways, you get the point there. They had the big noon kickoff twice, first 2 weeks of the season. 7.25 million that first week against TCU, who did not go to a bowl game. That was the second highest viewed game. The next week against Nebraska, 8.7.5, or 8.75 million viewers, second highest viewed game that week. They had the big noon kickoff later in week 5 against USC, 7.24, so 7.25 million viewers. Again, these numbers are crazy. Now, just 1 or 2 other notes here is that their game against Oregon in week 4. So if you remember, they come into this game ranked number 19. They're 3-0. And that game against Oregon was over so fast. They lost, was it 42-7, I believe? It was a bad game for them. But that game, it was 10 million viewers. It was ranked number 1 for that week, and it was the 3:30 ABC slot. Now, that game was the second highest viewed game in the entire regular season last year. It was second only behind Ohio State and Michigan. Which is incredible. So Colorado versus Oregon had more viewers than the Iron Bowl, Alabama and Auburn, and any other rivalry game. That's an insane number to me, because that was coming from a team that was 1-11 the previous year. And Oregon is a great view. They're a great team to watch. They were number 10 at the time. But there is no other team in the country that is going to do that. What Colorado did. Now, remember, I said they went from 4 million to 53 million. So they increased their wins by 300%, right? Going from 1 to 4. Uh, but or I guess, would that be 400%? No, that'd be 300%. But their viewership, 13x, okay, 53 million. All of these stats, these are all on a 4-8 team. Okay, that Oregon game, that had better viewership than the Pac-12 championship, which had Washington and Oregon both. Well, Oregon had one loss to Washington, but everyone was pretty sure the winner is going to go to the CFP. So really big game. And that Oregon game also had better viewership than the Big Ten championship game. Uh, the last statistic here I'll give you is that Colorado had, I believe it was, okay, they had 4 of the 25 highest viewed games of 2023, and that 25 highest viewed games includes bowl games and CFP games. So this shows you the magnitude of what Deion was attracting and the volume of eyeballs that he was attracting. And why is that important to brand? Which again, this is all to come back to how could Colorado organically grow into a brand that could be a national power? Well, eyeballs attract attention. And think about it, if you're a 17-year-old kid who's really good, you have a chance to go play for prime time, and you know you're going to get to play in prime time. Sure, your opponents may not be SEC opponents, but you're still going to be on a big stage. That is an appealing pitch for a lot of players, and I'm going to take you through in a minute here why that recruiting is showing up the way it is. But as we move further into the future with college football, part of brand value is what can you as a conference and as a school bring to the broadcasters. Remember, a good portion of school revenues and conference revenues are coming through those TV contracts. I believe that college football has opportunity, and each school has opportunity to generate more revenue through more revenue streams. That's a story for another day. But when you have a high amount of dependence on your TV contracts, then the more value you can bring to those to those broadcasters, the better, right? And so we're moving away from the days of the Rutgers and the Northwesterns now, who are in 2 big TV markets but do not draw. I was looking at one game last year. Northwestern had 700,000 viewers, and Chicago is the 3rd biggest market in the country. So Rutgers and Maryland were brought into the Big Ten because they were in the New York, Philly, New Jersey market, and then the DC market for Maryland. And it was a number of cable subscribers, people who weren't even necessarily watching college football, and yet they were in those markets. And so Big Ten Network was going to make buku bucks off of that, and they did. And credit them for having vision to do that. They had vision before most of the other schools did. So before the other conferences did, right, to create ACC Network, and I believe that came before SEC Network. But that's not how value is going to be measured as much going in the future, because if you're a Rutgers but you're not pulling in the viewership, it doesn't matter if you're living in a market that could pull in huge numbers. And think about this also as we start getting potentially into streamers viewing game or broadcasting games. Okay, it's probably going to come at some point. Was it Netflix or Amazon is going to start broadcasting some, or not Amazon, it is Netflix. They're going to start broadcasting a few NFL games. So streamers are going to come to college football at some point. I don't know when, I don't know exactly how. And even the Fox and ESPN, they're putting more on, or at least ESPN is putting more on streaming, right? The Big 12, ESPN Plus, we know this. Those of you who watch the Big 12. So let's bring it back. Went on a little tangent there. Let's bring it back now to the second thing I want to touch on briefly about recruiting. And I don't have any fancy graphs here, but I was going to read through some data for you. Since 2000, Colorado's recruited 4 5-star players, and 2 of them came under Deion. Okay, since 2000, Colorado's recruited 45 high school players who were a 4-star or 5-star rated player, and 8 of those players, so about 20% of these 4 and 5 stars, came under Deion. All right, now the last thing I'm going to tell you here is Colorado in 2024, their 24 class, this most recent high school class. So this is all high school talent, obviously, right now. Transfer portal, that's a whole nother animal. I'm not going to get into that right now. I recognize that Colorado's a little unconventional there, or a lot unconventional, and I don't know how long they're going to pursue that. Deion is either way ahead of the curve, or I think he's going to have to adjust in the future. I think he is going to need to bring in more high school talent, and he's doing a good job with it. It could be that he is. It could be in years 3, 4, and 5. He has supplemented enough with the transfer portal and then built high school. I believe that in today's world for coaching, you have to have results in year 1. And the fastest way to do that is the transfer portal while you're starting to rebuild the high school pipelines and build new high school pipelines. So we could see Deion pick up more high school recruiting over the next few years. We'll see. But in this 24 cycle, per 24/7 Sports, these recruiting numbers are coming from there. And those TV numbers I cited, those came from Sports Media Watch. So I want to give credit there. But their recruiting average, their average player rating this year was 0.911. So that is 4-star rate. That 4 stars. That's good enough to be a 4-star. And that was ranked 10th highest in the country. So that was in the SEC, SEC Big Ten realm. I mean, they were recruiting in the upper echelon levels of those conferences. That's pretty significant. They didn't have a high volume of recruits, but nonetheless, the recruits they brought in were very, very good. If you see, so I'm looking at the average player rating because that is just tells me the sheer quality, average quality of the player. The recruiting ranking is a little bit weird because it's influenced by the volume of recruits. So I don't look at that as much. For reference, in Big 12, the next best schools in the 2024 cycle were Texas Tech and UCF. I don't know if you knew that, but that's interesting. I mean, Texas and Florida, that's interesting because they had a 8.91 and an 8.891 and a 0.883 average player rating. So, I mean, this is fascinating here. All right, so what does this all mean again? Deion Sanders, if he's bringing in talent, if he can put that talent together to win, then the eyeballs that he's already attracting are going to explode. And then you've got the virtuous cycle of building a brand in college football because winning begets bringing in more talent, and bringing in more talent begets more winning begets more attention, which helps with NIL, which helps with recruiting, which helps with notoriety, which helps with the polls. This is where I know that AP polls don't determine CFP, but AP polls certainly have a large amount of sway still to this day, because for good or for bad, they set a preseason. They set the benchmark of where teams are or aren't. And even the CFP is not immune. The CFP committee is not immune to being influenced by the fact that a school was or was not in the top 25 at the beginning of the season. It paints the way that we view seasons, and sometimes that's good, sometimes that's not good. If Deion is able to be successful, then suddenly you could see, and we saw this on a small scale, where Colorado won 3 games and they got ranked 19. There's no way they were the 19th best team in the country last year when they played Oregon. There's absolutely no way. I believe they have a chance to start out 6-0 this year. I put some predictions out on thirddownanalysis.com that you can go look and see. I predict them to finish 7-5. They have a more difficult back half of the schedule. So if they start off 5-0, 6-0, you are going to hear a lot of chatter. Some of it will be warranted, some of it will not. But that is part of the brand building. And suddenly now with Deion and with the recruiting and with the hype he's able to build, if Colorado has a 10-2 team in a couple of years, I think that starts to create the image among people and those who make the decisions that, well, maybe a 10-2 Colorado team can get in over a 9-3 LSU team. And it will always depend season to season, but now if you've got 10-2 Colorado team, and let's say that Utah beat them and Utah is 10-2, suddenly Utah's resume looks much stronger. Okay, and vice versa. So this is where this could happen for any school in the Big 12, but I'm specifically calling out Colorado because of the Coach Prime effect. And that's where their influence could really start to reap benefits for the Big 12 conference down the road. I don't know if any of this is going to happen, but it's fun to think about it. It's fun to project this out. So thanks for joining in today. Thanks for listening. Like I said before, if you want to read more written content, you can go to thirddownanalysis.com. If you enjoy the comment, please like it, please share it, send me a message, support at thirddownanalysis.com, or drop a comment. If you are listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, rate it however and follow it however those options are available to you. And join me next time. I'm going to be bringing on some more guests here in the future. We're going to be talking about the impact of the CFP on coaching. We're going to be talking about private equity in college football. I'm going to be doing some more BYU deep dives. I will also, over the course of the summer, be doing my best to work through season predictions for the different teams in the Big 12. I've done some recent draft analysis and put that up on thirddownanalysis.com. So thanks for joining. Thanks for listening. And God bless. Have a great day.